Islam, what's up? What's happening? Salute. Shalom. It's Mirage. I'm back. And just wanted to greet the ladies and gentlemen with peace. Hopefully everything has been positive with you. And of course, we are in the Masjid of higher learning and higher intelligence. So this past weekend, I saw that the federal government created another false holiday that they called Juneteenth. And, you know, it seems to just be more lies. So what we're going to do in this tape is we're going to add some balance to the lies that have been put out by the Dajjalic system to deceive the people and just cause more confusion. Also in this tape, we're going to use this to inspire and motivate the people, whoever you are, wherever you may be, to help you understand that your inner soul and spirit can guide you. And through good conduct and good characteristics and being obedient to what we know is true and real, we will have success. So although there will be a lot of trials and tribulations and a lot of chaos going on around us, if we have been doing what we're supposed to have been doing, and showing love to ourselves, the environment, and the people that matter the most, you will be protected in these times. There's no way that God Most High will allow his people to be attacked, although he is, you know, bringing judgment on this entire earth creation. So if you've been on your shit, there's no reason to be, you know, worried or bothered. No reason to feel threatened, and there's nothing that can be dangerous towards you. So just keep that in mind. So in this tape, we're going to talk about some history, and also we will look into the Sahih Bakari and read about some of the different messages that were left by the prophet, and, you know, just use this to empower ourselves, you know, because we all need some instruction. But, you know, before we move forward, just know that that instruction comes from your heart within. All the point of all religious or spiritual systems is for you to understand that within your heart, deep within your heart, your soul and spirit resides within. And the whole point of your physical life is to go through a variety of tests and go through that labyrinth, go through that maze, all right, and actually figure out your true self, your inner self. So that's the whole point of all this. And we want to be conscious, and we want to be awake, and we want to be aware that that is what we're doing while we're living this physical life. So we want to realize that awakening my soul and spirit within myself and fulfilling the great work that it, you know, tells me to do within this lifetime, that is what is relevant and what is important. Because in order to know the God of creation, we must first learn that God that's within us. So when we read about Yeshua or Yahushua, or the man that they call Jesus, when he would say that you have to go through the Son to get to the Father, what he is talking about is you have to go through your own internal personal spirit and soul. And through understanding that Lord within you and following the instructions of that Lord within you will guide you to the higher self, and it will guide you to the ocean where all the souls, that primordial ocean where all the souls and spirits come from, that the Most High had us all dwelling within prior to creation even manifesting itself. So just keep in mind that there is an eternal, immortal, perfected aspect of you, but it is asleep in a lot of us. So we must awaken it, and we have to put the carnal ego and a lot of our lower desires to the side. Most of us get caught up being great hunters in earth. There's a reason why in the Bible and the Quran, they talk about these great men who were hunters, or they call them the mighty men. That's another term that they'll call them, the Geborim, or these mighty men in the Old Testament. You had the evil Canaanite king who was ruling over the Israelites in Egypt. You had Nimrod, you had Esau. All these men were described as mighty hunters. What is a mighty hunter? A mighty hunter is one who goes to and fro through the earth, consuming everything that he can, always looking to see what can he get to fulfill his own ego, fulfill his own desires. He's never looking to give back to the earth. See, one of the Christ principles and one of the things that Yahushua wanted to teach the people is that in order for you to be exalted and ascend to the highest point, you must be willing to sacrifice, meaning in order to rise, you must give something up. Now, that's very, very confusing to most of us because it's a paradox. So that means that in order to become a millionaire, you have to give up everything that you have now. That principle is also seen within the story of Job in the Old Testament. All right. So that is another thing that we have to not be in a state of selfishness, because that selfishness is also part of that carnal ego that individual I and personality that comes to life once that soul and spirit incarnates into this physical body. You know, once that breath is in this physical body, that the human brain awakens, your five senses get to activated. You start experiencing the sensual world around you. So a lot of us, we get very, very caught and consumed with wanting to always please ourselves, wanting to always take away from something else so we can add to ourselves. But that is not what we're really supposed to be doing. The true thing is in all the prophets we're trying to teach the people is that, look, when you have a community of people of the same ethnic national group, you're supposed to share with each other, you know, and that's how everybody comes up. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you're supposed to be as a people. So that's why those prophets were always willing to share, you know, and they were always willing to do the things that other people in the community didn't necessarily want to do. So that must be understood in order to, you know, pass a lot of these tests and make it through that maze and fully awaken your soul and spirit. Because the more pure your intent is, you know, once you start getting into like spirituality, start reading the Quran, the Bible, or whatever spiritual instrument you choose to use, the more sincere you are about that, the harder the tests are going to be. The more you're going to be challenged, the more you're going to lose, the more it's going to be taken away from you, the more your life is going to seem like Job. But that's also an indicator that you're actually on the right road. So I wanted to just take some time to, you know, put that out there because somebody may have needed to hear that. But just keep it in mind, you know, stay on the right road. And also remember this, too, that although I may use terms like Islam, the Quran, the Bible, a Muslim, a Nazarene, a Hebrew, etc., what we have to understand is that the true religion of humanity is being a good person. Let me repeat that one more time. The true religion of humanity is being a good person. All right. So when you're a good, righteous person to yourself, to other people around you, to the environment, and to the other living beings of creation, that is actually the true religion. And in order to activate and operate and behave in that true religion, you must listen to your soul and spirit within you. All right. So understand that a Muslim is one who submits to the true laws of nature, one that submits to the true laws of creation, or one that submits to how the Most High or the creator of this, you know, material world around us and the non-material world, whatever the will is of that we'll call spiritual force that is responsible for all this. Well, you have to submit to the will of that. You have to submit to something that's greater than you. You see? So that is what a Muslim is. So I don't care what it is you practice. If you submit to the truth, then you're practicing Islam, whether you know it or not, or whether you believe it or not. You're practicing true Judaism in its original form, the true Hebraic sciences. That is exactly what you're practicing. If you're a person that likes sharing with people, whenever you have things in abundance, you always like to give to people. You like to, you know, put other people in a good mood. Even when people are negative towards you sometimes, when you know how to extinguish that negative fire by wanting to retaliate against them, and you know how to move on about your day and not pass that energy, that negative energy to other people. If you know how to operate and do that, you're practicing Islam. I would consider you as a Muslim. So just keep that in mind when we talk about, you know, all this stuff. The true religion is practicing good conduct and good behavior towards yourself, other people, and the living environment around you. All right. So, as I said, we're going to read in the Sahih Bakari, look into some information on the last hour. But right now, what we're going to do is I want to look at some pictures. So right here, we see a picture of a man, and he is in the classical, what is known as blackface. Now, blackface is a certain sector of entertainment that was created around the Reconstruction era after the so-called Civil War. So we're talking about the late 1800s. And it was really even before the Civil War. But, you know, the 1800s, OK, 1800s, early 1900s, really all the way to this day, we've seen people of other ethnic backgrounds, other national groups put on this act that's something called blackface. And blackface is basically when people of other ethnic groups would try to make these what I'll call characters out of these stereotypes that they would, you know, attribute to so-called black people or indigenous American people, Shemitic, Moorish peoples. They would give us these, you know, stereotypes and stuff like that. The big lips, the big eyes, the tar black paint on the face, things of that nature. And a lot of this stuff was to ridicule, mock people and stuff like that. But it served as entertainment. And eventually, even a lot of our own indigenous American people, we started doing the blackface. Really, to a lot of us, when I looked in research, some of us were doing it to counter some of these negative stereotypes and almost as a form of a parody to, I guess, somewhat soften the blows. But nevertheless, this was a part of our history. And it still is to this day. But there's always the truth put in your face. So now this picture of blackface, more than likely goes back to, as I was saying, the 1800s. Also, when you hear that term Jim Crow, you'll hear the Jim Crow era, where you had basically after the Democratic Party in the South. Because remember now, the quote unquote slave class was the Democratic Party as far as the political wing. And after the Union and the Republican Party destroyed that Democratic elitist class in the South, a lot of them lost power. And the indigenous American Moorish peoples who were from the various tribal clans, such as the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Yamasee, the Muskogee, whatever tribes that they may have been in the Southeast, in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, all the states in the South. These people started getting in the Republican congressional seats, a lot of the local county seats, and a lot of the state seats. So a lot of the disenfranchised people, when we were starting to rebuild our nation, the real American nation, the real Moorish Empire, the real Mississippian Empire, when it was being rebuilt, we were doing it through the Republican Party. And South Carolina and North Carolina was one of the leading capitals. So really, North Carolina and South Carolina would have been almost like the ancient Egypt for our people in the Reconstruction era. That was the capital where we were basically going to reintroduce ourselves into the post-Civil War world. And that's where a lot of our power was, in North and South Carolina. That's where we had a lot of representatives. If I'm not mistaken, some of the first congressmen who were introduced to, the quote unquote, the Union, or at least the Caucasian Union, they were some Moorish brothers from the Carolinas, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, we were getting our stuff back together. And the Democratic Party, once they got their power back, they created that Jim Crow era. And, the Union and the Republican Party withdrew a lot of their military support in the South, a lot of their financial support. The Freedmen's Bureau and the other different indigenous banks that were created to try to help some of our disenfranchised people, a lot of that stuff was defunded. So this allowed the Ku Klux Klan and other Freemasonic groups and other Democratic parties, other satanic clubs, to rise in prominence in the South. So that's where a lot of that harsh segregation stuff, and when you saw the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the early 20th century, this is a lot of that history in the late 1800s. So the history that I'm talking about right now is going to be from about 1868 up until about, maybe about 1955, 1968, let's say. So let's say from 1868 to 1968 is when this history was going on. The Reconstruction era all the way to what we call the quote unquote Civil Rights Act. That really was all one thing. But, we really are still in that as we speak today. Also, another thing I want to talk about is, as I said, a lot of the historical narratives were created during the Reconstruction era as well. Some of the elitist Democratic, Caucasian classes in the South, they didn't like how they lost that power in the Civil War. So a lot of them, or at least a lot of the women from those groups, they created what's known as the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And that was basically just like the Daughters of the American Revolution. Those different, Christian female groups who are actually the descendants of the harem ladies, their female ancestors that go back to medieval Europe, back to the 1500s, 1600s, and really a little bit before that. But their descendants were known as the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And they were the ones actually that started to create a lot of these, civil rights monuments of these, civil war monuments to these different racist Civil War generals and people that fought in the war. Also, let me say this, too. When the American so-called Civil War was being fought, you had the Caucasian Union fighting against the Caucasian Confederacy. But you have to remember that there was an indigenous American separate group that had their own power, and they were even financing their own army. And they may have been working with, a little bit of people in the Union, and some of them may have been working with some people in the Confederacy in the South. But just understand that whole narrative that the wars fought to free black people and all that different stuff, none of that is true. Our people had our own government here. And that government was, some of us know of it as the Iroquois Confederacy. But it was the various organized governments and I'll call communities of peoples that were along the Mississippi River. So when I say the Mississippian Empire, I'm talking about that empire that was here prior to the 1490s when the first Europeans showed up. There was already an organized, civilization here, an organized government. The people had a nationality. They may have had different ethnic clans and different family ties. But as far as them having an indigenous American union, I will say that was there. So just keep in mind that, the Mississippi River was the lifeline to the ancient government that was here, or at least it was one of them. So let's look at this picture right here in front of us. Now, as we see, this man right here is in his classical blackface. But as we can see, he's wearing the Moorish fez or the Shemitic fez, the fez of the indigenous man. So as you can see right here, they put the truth right there in front of you. Why would this Caucasian man be in blackface, or this may be a quote unquote Jewish man? Why would they be doing this blackface actor entertainment and he's putting on a quote unquote costume? But why, when he is mocking the indigenous Moorish man of the Americas, why does he put a fez on? You see the fez right here. You see the tassel hanging down. So as you can see, they put your history right here in front of you. Why is he dressing up as if he's a Muslim? Why is he dressing up as if he's a quote unquote Israelite? Why is he doing that? Because he knows that the true indigenous American, the fez was one of their national headdresses, as well as the turbans and all the other different types of headdresses we will wear. So during the American Civil War, you had so-called black men who were from the South. And when they were fighting, they were wearing fezes. Yes, let me repeat that one more time. During the so-called American Civil War in the 1860s, you had so-called black men that were in the South. They were practicing Islam. Okay, they were Muslims and Hebrews, and they were wearing turbans and fezes. And they were from various tribes in the Southeast that we call Native American tribes. And these men were organized fighting in the quote unquote Civil War. All right. So I just wanted you to see this history right here and understand that, a lot of this stuff was hidden, So also, too, they used to make a lot of soap ads back in the 1800s because they would call us stuff like the plantation darky. That was who Jim Crow was. I think in his little blackface skit, the narrative was he was like this plantation darky, he was dumb and kind of like this bumbling fool and stuff like that. So a lot of those stereotypes, also that Birth of a Nation, the original one with the Ku Klux Klan, that also spreaded that propaganda about the indigenous Moorish man being a sexual deviant and always going after the Caucasian Christian woman. That's where that was also spread as well. So also a lot of you all out here today that have these very, very hateful, negative responses when you see so-called black men with quote unquote white women. A lot of you all have that Birth of a Nation energy, that original one. That really brought the Ku Klux Klan back, because that's another thing I'm noticing out here. And I'm not saying, I'm not really for or against the interracial thing. I don't really care what anybody does. But I do notice that, man, for some reason, when it comes to the so-called black man, when he starts dating women or getting with women of other ethnic groups, no one likes that. It seems like that's just a big problem. But anyway, let me move forward. So where we going to go next? All right, so now we're going to go into the Sahih Bakari. But before we do that, this is another picture I saw. So once again, during the Reconstruction era, our people were in quote unquote segregation. And when we were in segregation, we had to teach ourselves, meaning we had our own schools. Now, when you look at these typical history pictures and documentaries, You know, they'll always try to show you the so-called black people in those raggedy wooden homes, those raggedy, you know, log house schoolhouses, the kids in there with dirty, dusty clothes on, with no shoes, with hand-me-down books. They saying that the teachers were illiterate, and basically they try to make you think that during the late 1800s that none of our people could read and we didn't know nothing and all this other type of shit. When all that's a fucking lie. Why right here in this documentary? And also this documentary is called Reconstruction Era. It was made on, I think, by that guy, Henry Louis Gates. And I got it off of pbs.org. All right, I got off the website. So it's a Reconstruction documentary by that guy, Henry Louis Gates, to have a lot of these rare Moorish pictures in it. But as you can see in this picture, the indigenous American Shemitic people, the Moorish people, why are they studying how to make pyramids? You see this right here? This is more than likely back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, 1910 maybe. But more than likely, this may go back to like the 1870s, 1880s. As you can see, the Moorish man right here teaching the kids in the school about the pyramids. And as you can see, he's even reconstructing one right here in front of him, showing you the inner three-dimensional aspects of the pyramid. So how would these people know this if we were just these people coming from slavery and didn't know how to read? For one, a lot of this was in the genetics. And for two, a lot of this was already being taught to our people throughout the entire 1800s, because we are the ancient mound builders. We are the ancient pyramid builders here in the Americas. Those pyramids in South and Central America were built by so-called black people, indigenous American peoples. We built those pyramids. Moorish peoples built those. All right. So this is real facts right here. So I just wanted you all to see this, that in the early 1900s and in the late 1800s, you all's ancestors, while we was in segregation, were learning how to reconstruct and make pyramids. So had we stayed in segregation, we probably would have started making pyramids in the early 1900s in our cities. So we talking about a Black Wall Street and a Rosewood. Imagine recreating ancient Jerusalem in 1930 in the middle of Georgia or in the middle of Mississippi or in the middle of the Carolinas somewhere. And it's a whole pyramid city, step pyramids, too, like we do it in the ancient world over here. That's another thing. We do the step pyramid. That's the ancient one, you know. But this is the type of, you know, understanding and learning that our people were receiving during segregation. So don't let them make you think that just living among so-called black people is a bad thing. No, it's not. You know, if it's the good ones, we got to do a genocide and a eugenics to a lot of these people in our community that ain't no good for us. But once we get them out the way, I wouldn't mind living around just our people only. And as we can see right here, we have a picture of the Muslim indigenous American woman, the Moorish woman, the Empress. As you can see, she's in her red, white, and blue. So the American flag, that red, white, and blue with those stars, we created that. That's an ancient indigenous color, the red, white, and blue. You see how she got her crown on? The red, white, and blue with the feathers, with her turban. All right. So she got on her crown with the red, white, and blue, and then she got on the tobacco skirt with the red, white, and blue. Also at the bottom down here, you can see the indigenous animal. OK, the American alligator. You're going to always see the American alligator because that was the animal of royalty in the ancient world. Let me repeat that. When you see these old cigar pictures of the Blackamoor Indian or the Moorish American Indian pictures, in these cigar shops or these statues, a lot of the times you're going to see the indigenous alligator or the indigenous American creature known as the alligator associated with the Moorish noble. All right. So the Empress here is with the American alligator. All right. Also, too, the alligators are found where? In the South, right? So they found in as far west as Texas and as far east as the Carolinas and Florida. OK. So the alligator is an ancient animal. All right. And it was a royal animal here in the Americas. So now we're going to go into the Sahih Bakari. And let's see what we can find out. Starting in chapter 2 on page 1020, we're going to talk about the appearance of trials and afflictions. So let's read. So it first says, it will be from among the most wicked people who will be living at the time when the hour will be established. And right here, the prophet's talking about the last hour. So it's going to be the most wicked people around you. OK, you're going to see some of the most wicked things happening. All right. Let's continue. It says, be patient till you meet your Lord, for no time will come upon you, but the time following it will be worse than it. I heard that from your prophet. So it says, be patient and wait till your Lord comes. Your Lord is your inner soul and spirit. And when you're in tune with your own inner soul and spirit, when these other men of higher consciousness, these other men that are positive, righteous leaders, when they start showing up in the world, you will be able to become in union with those people. All right. And then eventually, when you leave this physical world, you will be able to return to the origin of your soul and spirit, the great Lord. All right. So the little Lord is your soul and spirit within you. The great Lord is what we call God or Allah Most High, where the soul and spirit comes from. All right. So it says, none of you should point towards his Muslim brother with a weapon, for he does not know Satan may tempt him to hit him, and thus he would fall into a pit of fire. So it says here that none of you shall point out towards your Muslim brother a weapon. So that means that in these times, you're not really supposed to be having a lot of these beefs with other so-called black men if you can avoid it, you know. So all that, you know, just kind of getting into it. And I'll even say with the so-called black woman as well. You know, this ain't really no time for you to be beefing with people of your own ethnic national group. You know, this is the time to be trying to find the folks who are good people that's part of your own ethnic national group and rocking with those people. And the ones that may be negative, just stay away from them. You know, just stay away from them. But as it says right here, you know, you shouldn't point a weapon at your Muslim brother. So even Blackbeard, you know what I'm saying? I'm hella strapped up, multiple sticks, green lights and all that. But I know who to point it to and who not to point it to. You see what I'm saying? So, yes, you can protect yourself, but you got to know who's the enemy and who's not the enemy. All right. Now, check this out. It says, there will be trials and tribulations in the near future, during which a sitting person will be better than a standing one, and the standing one will be better than the walking one, and the walking one will be better than the running one. And whoever will expose himself to these trials and afflictions, they will destroy him. So whoever can find a place of protection or refuge from them should take shelter in it. Now, this is very, very important and very, very critical, because I got a lot of homeboys, you know, older cousins, and, you know, they be out there running the streets, and, you know, sometimes they just be out there or whatever. And as it says right here, that there will be a time where the one that is sitting will be better than the one that's standing. So what is this saying? That means that when you leave your home, you should be taking care of business and doing what you need to do and get back home. This ain't the time for you to be out just loitering, just out doing a bunch of miscellaneous driving, miscellaneous traveling, miscellaneous just hanging out. This is a time for you to take care of business and get back to your own place of refuge. OK, get back to your own place. That's a safety. That's your home, or whether it's a friend or family member's home, that's a safe place for you. But you should be out just, you know, taking care of business and then just getting back home. I ain't saying that it's wrong with socializing, you know, going to public events, going to a bar or something like that. I'm not going to necessarily say that it's wrong to do that. But you got to be careful on just wanting to be so antsy and wanting to just jump in the car, wanting to just go and turn up and just go do something and wanting to just go get lit. Or every time somebody call you and they say they ain't hanging out, you too quick to pull up. You know what I'm saying? They hit your phone. Hey, bro, what you doing? Or hey, sis, what you doing? Whatever. Da, 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 da. You may have been home just chilling. You know what I'm saying? Minding your own business. Everything was peaceful. Everything was calm. But then they tell you, oh, man, pull up, whatever. We over here, blah, 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 whatever. Da, 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 da. You know what I'm saying? Then you pulling up and all this stuff. You out late all times of night. You know what I'm saying? Just like the other day, like, you know, I saw on the news some woman was out, you know, late at night around like 2, 3 in the morning or something like that. I think the woman was like kidnapped or something, and then they found her body burnt up or whatever, and she was dead on the south end of town and stuff like that. You know, I've been seeing a lot of little stuff like that on the news. So let me repeat this one more time. So it says that a sitting person will be better than a standing one, and the standing one will be better than the walking one, and the walking one will be better than the running one. So that means that whether you're sitting down in the house and just chilling, you're doing better than the person that's just standing up on the block on the corner in the neighborhood. If you're just standing up on the block in the corner in the neighborhood, at least you're doing better than the dude that done jumped in the car And he drove to the other side of the city just to see what's going on. And at least if you the dude that jumped in the car and just went to the other side of the city just to see what's going on, at least you better than the guy that's just jumping in planes and going to different countries and going to different cities and states just because he wants something to do because he's bored. So you see how the one who's not doing the most tends to be the one that's going to be preserved and the safest in all this. And that's how you need to be rolling, you know. So you go take care of business and you get back to a place of safety. You know, a lot of that miscellaneous hanging out and loitering and all that, ain't no sense of really doing that, you know, like you brothers out there. You know, if you're single or whatever, a lot of you all be wanting to meet the women and the ladies and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with that. But while you out doing your regular day, going to the gas station, going to the grocery store, talk to them then. Like, talk to them as you're on your regular course of the day. So let's say you woke up that day and on your schedule, you had to maybe go to the post office. Then after that, you may have had to drop off something at the bank. And then after that, you may have had to go to the grocery store. And then let's say that was the only thing you had to do that day. But let's say you also felt like, damn, man, I'm trying to meet me a little female or whatever. Like, you know, I ain't been talking to nobody for a minute. Then while you out there at the bank, while you at the grocery store, then you need to be looking and seeing what females are naturally around you at that moment while you already in the course of taking care of business. You meet them, you get their number, then you leave. You know what I'm saying? You get back to your place of safety. You can text her, you can call or whatever, and then you can, you know, communicate with her the right way. And then the next time you leave your home again, now you'll have an organized, structured way of how you meet up with her again. Maybe you'll go say, hey, OK, I'm going to meet you over here at this place and we're going to hang out. So in other words, you're going to be in more control of your reality. So it's a way to take care of business. But like I said, all that miscellaneous just being out because you bored, just because everybody seems like they lit on Instagram. You looking on social media. You looking like, damn, man, the COVID opened up. I've been sitting at home all this time. I've been bored. I've been waiting to get out to do something, man. Now the COVID restrictions have been, you know, let down. I can go out now. And all of a sudden you just want to jump up and go out. No, this ain't the time for that. You in the last hour, playboy or playgirl. So think wisely. So moving on. Another one, it says right here. It says, if Allah Most High or God sends punishment upon a nation, then it befalls upon the whole population indiscriminately. And then they will be resurrected and judged according to their deeds. So, you know, what's going on right now is that, you know, because I'm an American, I'm an indigenous American. OK, my country and my land is being judged right now. It's under prosecution by the creator of it. And a lot of people are going to be taken out and executed because of that. So he's going to bring the judgment upon the whole nation. But as long as I'm in my higher self and I've been doing what he's instructed my soul and spirit to tell me to do, then I should be OK. So understand that, you know, the judgment is brought upon an entire nation or an entire clan or tribe or an entire national ethnic group of people. You know, he ain't really finna point you out necessarily like that if it's part of a whole group association. So we do need to understand that as Americans, whether you are an indigenous American from one of the tribal, you know, autochthonous clans, or if you are a foreign born person that has, you know, been naturalized and you call yourself an American, but you may be of Caucasian descent, you know, Asian descent, you know, Tibetan descent or whatever the case may be. But, you know, whatever kind of quote unquote American you are, understand that our landmass is being severely judged right now. So you just need to know where are you at in that. And so the wrath won't be brought down upon you. You know what I'm saying? So let's see next. All right. So here we have right here. It says, soon the river Euphrates will disclose the treasure, the mountain of gold. So whoever will be present at that time should not take anything of it. Now, this is very critical. I'm going to reread this one more time. Allah's messenger said, soon the river Euphrates will disclose the treasure, the mountain of gold. So whoever will be present at taking time. Excuse me. My bad. Let me reread this one more time. Soon the river Euphrates will disclose the treasure, the mountain of gold. So whoever will be present at that time should not take anything of it. Now, I got a greater understanding of this when I studied a lot of the work put out by the Sheikh Imran Hussein. You can go and research it's a Sheikh named Imran Hussein. He puts out a lot of great work, peace be upon him. And the mountain of gold represents the great oil reserves that the modern egoistic nations of the quote unquote Middle East are going to fight for. And they want supremacy over that region so they can control that natural resource and be able to dictate how it's distributed throughout the world. All right. So a lot of the conflicts that are going to be going on in the quote unquote Middle East, at the end of the day, you all, it's about power, money, and resources. OK, so a lot of the different nations that are fighting in the Middle East, or at least a lot of the ones that have a Gog and Magog background, I'll say, they want control of the oil reserves that a lot of the existing Islamic nations still have control over. So you have Gog and Magog nations that are in the Middle East right now, and they are, working very, very hard in overtime to get control over various oil reserves in the Middle East, because that oil reserve is that mountain of gold. And the prophet said that while they are fighting over that mountain of gold, you should stay away from it. So that means that these different, material items that these great mighty hunters are fighting over, these militaries and these governments, these natural resources that they're about to fight this World War III over. A lot of us, if we don't have nothing to do with that, you need to stay out of the way of that. Stay out of the way of that. Also, another thing, like the mountain of gold could also be a lot of these loans that these governments are giving out. And people are taking these loans and they probably shouldn't take them. Certain stimulus advances that are put out for businesses. You have your PPP loans and things of that nature. This is that mountain of gold that's been put out. But as it says right here, so whoever will be present at that time should not take anything of it. So I'm not saying that if you took a business loan that it's just something evil and something bad is going to happen to you. If you took a business loan, you got the documentation or whatever these people ask for, then that's okay. But just beware and be very, very cautious of going for these mountains of gold out here that people are going to tell you about, and you're going to run towards it, and it's going to be basically a mountain of fire. And that's really what it's going to be. OK, because it says also that Dajjal has the ability to make a cool water look like a burning fire. And he has the ability to make a burning fire look like a cool water. So what that is saying is he's a master of deception. So it's a lot of things out here that may seem like, because it's a time of trouble and chaos, and we're this helping aid here to help you, it's really there to destroy you. And see, a lot of our indigenous Moorish ancestors, they fell for that trick here in the Americas. When the Spaniard Moorish Christian army came over here, those conquistadors and those mercenaries, those various Hamitic mercenaries that are from Africa that came with them, when they came here and destroyed the Mississippian kingdoms that were in the Americas, a lot of our people were disenfranchised. So then they would create things that's called the Red Cross organization. So you know how you see that Red Cross organization, and every time it's like a flood or something in Haiti, it's an earthquake or whatever, and you got the Red Cross organization, and they coming and showing up like they coming to give blood, and they coming to bring resources and stuff like that to try to quote unquote help the people, like in Hurricane Katrina, stuff like that, like these so-called lifeline groups or whatever. These groups were really coming in to rape, kidnap, and abuse and manipulate the people more and more and more. These Christian mercenary groups, they were showing up in the various clans and, different remote areas that our people had here. Once the kingdoms were broken down, they would show up and bleach the minds of the people. The people are already disenfranchised. They already hungry. Their families are torn up and they just trying to survive. And here now you got this foreign group of people showing up, claiming this foreign religion, saying that they're here to help you. But now they stealing your children and stuff like that. That's another thing that was happening during the Reconstruction era. They had a lot of laws that were put out during the Reconstruction era in the South. And they were saying that if you were a so-called indigenous American, quote unquote, black, disenfranchised black person, if you didn't have any kind of work contract, basically they would take your children. So if you weren't doing work, you were deemed to not be able to take care of your children. So now you know, the Caucasian planter family down the street, they'll say, well, I'll take their children in and they could be an apprentice for me and learn how to grow, you know, rice, or learn how to, you know, do some other type of manual labor. And now your child is staying with them, but they being abused every night and all this other type of stuff. So you see those pictures of those old Caucasian families, and they'll have they 2 little Caucasian children. But then you'll see this young so-called black child in the picture with all these dirty clothes on. That's what was going on then. So once they break the families down, they bring in these fake groups like they're there to help you, but they really there to destroy you. These Dajjalic groups. OK, so that's what that's talking about. So let's move forward. It also says that during the last hour that killings will increase. So the Prophet Muhammad was telling his people that there were going to be 10 great signs. And one of them was that killing was going to increase. Killings have been increasing. You know, I know in Atlanta that the murders are up 58% from last year. So in 2021, the murders have went up 58%. You know, so that's more killings. It also says that wealth will be in abundance. All right. Meaning that more currency will be put out in the market, because that's put out to try to, quote unquote, help you during this time of calamity. So how they create these stimulus packages and, you know, they're giving people money and little stuff like that. They always do that during the time of calamity. They did that in the ancient world, you know. So let's continue. So then it says, until the sun rises from the west. So when the sun will rise and the people will see it rising from the west, they will all believe or embrace Islam. But that will be a time where Allah says, no good will it do to a person to believe then, if he or she believed not before, nor earned good by performing good righteous deeds through his or her faith. So it also says that in the last hour, that the sun will rise from the west, or Islam will rise from the west. Let me repeat that. The prophet said that in the last hour, one of the signs will be that Islam will rise from the west, or the sun will rise from the west. And when the people see it, they will all embrace Islam, or they will all submit. So another one of the signs is that you would see the ancient Judaic, Hebraic, Islamic culture and thought process and way of life rise in the people of the West. So when people have been getting into this whole indigenous American movement, I'd say in the last few years, not only are you learning that you are indigenous to America, but you learn more about some of the cultures that the people were practicing here. And I don't care who's been making these damn indigenous American tapes or whatever, or what they tell you. In the Southeast, because see, a lot of these people that make these tapes, like, I don't know where in the country they may be from. You see, it's a lot of people that's on YouTube and they make tapes about, you know, us being indigenous to the Americas or whatever. But, you know, we all are spread out in all these different states. But I can tell you this for certain. I guarantee those that live in the Southeast probably got the most potent information. Or those of us that either live on the East Coast or the Southeast, we the ones that got the most potent information, because we got the same books and resources as you all, but we got these national monuments around us. We got these mounds still around us. We still got great aunts and ancestors in the families and uncles today that still talk about us being Cherokee and all that different type of stuff. So our information, and when we talk about this, we know what we're talking about. And when I say that the indigenous tribes that were in the Southeast during the Civil War, that a lot of them were practicing Islam, a lot of them were waving the red flag at Fort Negro. This is where I'm getting this stuff from. Okay? This is where I'm getting this from. So yes, there were ancient Seminole chiefs that were in the Southeast during the times of the Civil War, and they were practicing Islam. Now, was everybody in the tribe practicing Islam? Maybe, you know what I think it was? I think in these various tribes, the chiefs, the sheikhs, the beys, the ones that was leading the clans, I think they were practicing it. And maybe it was certain coalitions and groups of people that they talked about it with, and they were practicing it with them. But maybe the masses of the indigenous people, maybe a lot of them wouldn't have understood it like that. And maybe they just led it in Islam. But the masses of the people, maybe all of them didn't know about it. OK, because when I research a lot of the indigenous tribes in the Southeast, I'm seeing that the Cherokee chief, he was the one practicing Islam. I'm seeing that the Seminole chief, he was the one practicing Islam. I'm seeing that the different chiefs in Alabama, they were the ones practicing Islam. So it didn't necessarily say that all the Indians were practicing Islam. It said that the chiefs were practicing Islam. So you know how they say that, you know, it's too many Indians and not enough chiefs, or too many chiefs and not enough Indians. What I'm telling you is that the chiefs was practicing Islam and speaking Hebrew, you know, and stuff like that. All right. So the nobles, they the ones that knew about this different cultures and things that was going on in the Far East. Everybody throughout the Americas may have not known about it. May have been only the people that were part of the greater empire along the Mississippi that were actually involved in the trading, actually involved in meeting the other indigenous Shemitic people from the Far East as they came to the Americas. You know, maybe only they knew about it. But as it says right here, that Islam, or the sun will rise from the west, that's what it's talking about. The Maghreb al-Aqsa is the greatest west, the far west, you know, and they weren't just talking about Spain and Andalusia, and they weren't just talking about Northwest Africa. They were talking about the Americas, North, Central, and South America. And they knew that in the last days, that the original culture, the original religion, which is being a good person, which is knowing how to treat yourself, treat your environment, and treat other people, and knowing how to submit to the natural laws of the universe, the natural laws of creation, or what we call the will of God. They knew that that understanding would resurrect in the far west. So they also knew that it would be a great Babylonian evil kingdom in the far west. But they knew that the indigenous Muslims and Hebrews of the far west, the Americans, the true Americans, they knew that they would resurrect the true culture, you know. So this American, or this Muslim empress that you see right here on this picture, she somewhat is a symbol of that culture that we're trying to represent. So we are Americans, but we are a different America. So you see how she has on the red, white, and blue, but she doesn't look like, you know, a typical modern day American. She doesn't look like a 4th of July hot dog eating, you know, firecracker popping, you know, Independence Day watching. She don't look like that type of American. She looks like another type of American.